Good morning, everybody. We've got to have a quorum now, so we're going to roll on. First order of business this morning is going to be to adopt our committee rules. Just running through those real quick. Two notes I wanted to make on you, or for you to be aware of. We've set the quorum at 20 members. With a committee as large as what we have, the quorum, if we did half plus one, would be 41. And as you can see this morning, it's kind of hard to get everybody in the same place at the same time, so we're recommending keeping it at the 20 that it's been at for several years. One other slight change on rule number 4 in the italic language there on rule number 4, there had been a phrase in there right after no motion, comma, that the committee recommends, comma. We've deleted that with the advice of legislative counsel, and just basically says that, as it says now, no motion that a measure do pass or do not pass shall be in order until the chairperson has stated that such a motion shall be entertained or will be entertained. So those are the two changes. If you got any questions, be glad to answer that. If not, we will entertain a motion for passage. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. At this point, I'm going to ask Chairman Earhart to assume control of the meeting, and I will go to the podium to present the budget.
Chair recognizes Chairman England.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, good morning to members of the committee. I know there's a lot going on today, and it's hard to try to get here sometimes, and I appreciate you making that effort. We're going to go through this fairly quick. As you've seen, as you've worked through your subcommittees and participated there, there's just not an awful lot that we've done or had to do, or if we had the funds that we could do. So this truly meets the definition of a housekeeping bill, I believe, because it is merely just a cleanup of several things. I want to give you just a little bit of a dialogue to begin with, and then we'll go through the changes very quickly for you to see those, so we can get this passed out this morning and get out of the way for rules to meet at 10. The $19.3 billion amended fiscal year 13 budget is based on a revenue estimate that the amended version is at 3.9% of growth over fiscal year 12, lower than the 5.2 that we had budgeted for during the last session. To that end, the revenue estimate adjusts state funds, including lottery, down by some $228.6 million, and tempers the loss of some of those funds with adjusted payments from to the Treasury from some of our authorities, totaling about $22 million. One-time recognition of the National Mortgage Settlement Funds of $99.4 million, and the mid-year adjustment to education of $172.7 million. The net of all the numbers is about a $26.3 million reduction. This year, perhaps even more than in previous years, we've significantly limited our changes to the allotment of the mid-year adjustment for education to the proper K-12 programs, technical realignment of some funds based on agency spending and reductions, affectionately known again as housekeeping, and of course prioritizing and adequately funding the programs of the foremost priorities of the constituents of this House. There are no new programs proposed in the amended 13 budget, and 2 statewide changes to adjust property liability insurance premiums and telecommunication expenses, which appear in most of the department budgets. Just know those are there. I'm not going to touch on each one of those. Staff, in conjunction with the governor's office, has agreed to any of the adjustments to these measures, so we won't discuss each one. There are also 9 transactions where funds of equal amounts are simply shifted to their proper program within an agency. Together, again, these housekeeping measures constitute nearly half of the 114 changes we have made to the bill. In terms of the sheer number of changes from the governor's document, the next most prevalent series of items you'll see are largely agency reductions in operating expenses as submitted as part of their 3% reduction plan, are based on actual or current spending. These changes, which include a self-imposed 3% reduction in spending for the House of Representatives, will represent about a quarter of the adjustments on the bill. Most of these adjustments are made to the legislative and judicial branches where the executive branch does not have the authority to make those adjustments. Finally, the House version of Amended 13, there are 29 significant changes that provide additional funds for programs over the amount recommended in the governor's version. These are the items that best exemplify the priorities of the members of this House, and the majority of those are in the K-12 education category. In keeping with the spirit of having a mid-year adjustment to address educational needs in our schools, once student numbers have been confirmed, that makes for 13 adjustments in education, 8 changes made in health and human services, 4 in economic development, 3 in public safety, and 1 in general government. In addition, or an additional $10.4 million for deemed and non-deemed hospitals to participate in the DSH program, or the Disproportionate Share Hospital program, are included. A restoration of $659,320 for the residency development programs at Gwinnett Medical Center and the Southwest Georgia Consortium, and a restoration of $137,775 for graduate medical education residency slots. $488,679 is added back in for Mercer and Morehouse grants for medical education. We restored $511,737 for hypertension outreach services. Heard from quite a few folks about that, so we wanted to make sure that that was taken care of. Softened reductions to key education programs, including agriculture and career technical education, communities and schools, Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers, and RESAs. And then provided about $3.4 million to meet existing obligations for current charter system grants. I share this information with you to provide some perspective on how we approach the amended budget this year. We had exceptional input from agencies and departments in a spirit of cooperation for getting through a year with wide swings in revenue collections, and those departments and agencies should be applauded for their efforts and working relationship that we've had there. It is our expectation that we will see faster growth and greater economic certainty moving into fiscal year 2014. So it is our objective to fast-track a perfected amended bill so that our departments will have time to manage through the final portion of this year, and not only departments but also your local boards of education. The bill and tracking sheets will be posted following this meeting to the internet, so if you want to go there and look, you're able to. I would be extremely remiss if I didn't mention a hat tip and a thank you to our subcommittee chairs, Jay Powell, Penny Houston, Earl Earhart, Butch Parrish, Ed Reinders, Tom Dixon, Katie Dempsey, and our committee secretary, Secretary Amy Carter. However, had it not been for this next list of individuals, we wouldn't have gotten done. And that's Martha Wigden, our budget office director, Christine Murdoch, our deputy director, Alicia Hatala, who is the one that keeps the wheels on everything and greased and everything in their office, Margie Coggins, Tracy Atchison, Jeremy Dickerson, Sarah Dunn, Buck Dixon, Brian Grome, and Sarah, say it again, Arroyo. I can't get that. I'm sorry, it's a mental block. Sorry, Sarah. Also, thank you to the standing committee analysts. Many of you have seen them kind of huddled in the back corner somewhere in a chair in the window seat somewhere, taking notes diligently. But it's because of their professionalism and dedication that has enabled us to better align these budget cuts and expenditures where needed. So, with all that said, I want to walk you through your budget document through the tracking sheet. And Martha's good about bringing me changes and constantly updating my stuff, so I have to keep up, and this is version 3.0 for me. So anyway, first change occurs in Section 2, the House of Representatives. Like most agencies, our House is taking a 3% reduction. Section 3, dealing with General Assembly joint offices, the reduction in operating expenses is about a 3% reduction there as well. Audits, Section 4, audits and accounts, you're looking at some minor reductions of about almost 3% there. The two reductions, 4.1.1 and 4.1.2, are just some savings that can be gathered through managing attrition and travel expenses and such. Moving on, Section 5, Court of Appeals. A little something odd happened here. I won't go into the details of it, but there were some things submitted, and actually asking for some funds to be restored. We were not able to do that at this time, so you'll see on 5.1.1, 5.1.3, and 5.1.4, those things we're going to defer to 14 to look at again there. Some of those, again, may not be funded at that point in time. Section 6, under Judicial Council, we have put off that e-filing initiative again also to the 14 budget. Just simply a lack of cash to be able to do some of these things, so we've moved those things forward into 14. Section 8, prosecuting attorneys, 8.2.1, 8.3.1. Again, those items are deferred to the fiscal year 14 budget discussions. Section 9, Superior Courts, 9.3.1. We did restore the senior judge money. That I'm sure most, if not all of you, if you haven't heard from your senior judges, you should have, but most everybody, I think, heard from them. But it is an important function that they do, especially as we roll out the accountability courts across the state. They are coming in and taking up some of the load that the Superior Court judges cannot handle at that time. 9.2.1, 9.2.2, and 9.3.2, again, are items we've decided to defer to fiscal year 14 discussions. Section 11, State Accounting Office, a restoration on 11.1.1 of $90,000. Those funds were already committed, and what that is, State Accounting Office has a contract with Carl Vinson Institute over at the University of Georgia to bring in all the fiscal officers from state agencies to walk through a course once a year, so that money has already been expended, so we needed to make sure that it was there. Moving on to Section 12, DOAS, line 12.9.1. Just a slight reduction, additional reduction there, and that's just because that court didn't get up and running first thing July 1, so we've been able to accrue some savings there. Section 13, Department of Ag, 13.4.6. The pilot project we put into place last year dealing with H-1B and H-2A guest worker programs was not as successful as we had hoped, and so again, as a pilot project, a true pilot project is one of those things. If you put in place it doesn't work, then you turn around and take it back out, and that's what we've done there. Moving on to Section 16, Department of Community Affairs. You'll see two changes there on 1611.2. A small reduction in REBA grants. That money was from reserves and not any money that's applied to any grant projects that are currently underway. Then on 16.12.1, GFA actually has some money that they can backfill that with, so we were able to take a savings there as well and help them out. Moving on to Section 17. 17.4.1, I mentioned the disproportionate share of hospitals a while ago, and this is where we made the adjustment there. You'll see an add that goes to those deemed and non-deemed private hospitals because they're not eligible for some of the other funds unless we put those funds in there. Now, under 17.5.11, there's a $1.2 million cut there. We had put that money in last year for the single-dose vials. That program didn't turn out the way we thought it would, so we've taken a reduction there. And then on 17.5.12 is an adjustment for expected expenditures, and I'll show you where part of that money came from here in just a second, and you'll see it on line 17.6.11, and it's basically just redirecting into the programs where the money is needed. And you'll see an add back also in 17.7.8, and that's just a part of that $104 million cut spread to a couple of different agencies. Part of that money was also used in the disproportionate share backfill. Still under Section 17, under 17.10.1, that is those of you in Southwest Georgia, we've heard from you about the Southwest Georgia Consortium, the money we'd put in to get those residency slots open and going, and also the Gwinnett Medical Center slots. What we've done is reduce that cut, but actually restored it to the point that it covers any obligations they have outstanding for the current year. 17.10.2, we simply reduced that cut from a 3% to 1.5%. 17.10.3, we had funded for 9 slots, only 7 were accepted, so we've taken that little bit of a savings. 1711-1 and 1712-1 is the restoration of a partial restoration of the cuts to Mercer and Morehouse from a 3 to a 1.5% reduction there. Section 18, Department of Corrections. See a little bit of stuff move back and forth there. The department was very forthcoming, and we owe them a thank you also for coming up and helping us find some additional savings there. Chairman Powell talked to them and worked with them, and they were very gracious in coming up with about $1 million cut that we could use to backfill some other problems that we had within their agency and help them get through this coming year. 1881 and 1811-2 is basically just a realignment to where the money is needed, just a transfer or a money swap. Moving on now to Section 22, Economic Development. You'll see one slight change at 20.0.2. That's just a little housekeeping move there that we needed to make. 22.5.1. We felt like, Chairman Houston felt like, and her committee felt like, that that reduction did not need to be taken. So we've put that money back in, and that's where part of that REBA money that we showed earlier went to. And then a slightly increased reduction to 22.5.5 on GRA. It won't affect anything they're doing now. We're just asking them to find some additional efficiencies. Department of Education, Section 23. Under Ag Ed, you'll see a restoration from a 3% cut to 1.5% cut. 22.2.3, we restored the money for the superintendent's leadership program. That is the one opportunity that the superintendent has to get all of the statewide school superintendents, all 180 of them, together in one place so they can discuss what they need to discuss and set the path for future in education here in Georgia. And that is done through a partnership with Georgia Power and the Georgia School Superintendents Association and us as a state. 23.4.1, a small restoration in communities and schools. This is a program that we feel that has a lot of merit and is working very well in the communities that it's a part of. You'll see that reduction goes from a 3% reduction to about a 2.1% reduction. 23.9.1, Georgia Youth and Science Technology Centers. That $36,000 cut was the last quarter of funding for them this year. We felt that it inappropriate for something that was ongoing, especially in the STEM initiative, to basically pull the rug out from under them as they're finishing up the year. We will have some discussions in 2014 about doing something differently there, but we felt like we needed to help them finish up the year as best we could. Governor's Honors Program, 23.10.1, we softened the cut there from a 3% to a 2.1% cut as well. Non-QBE grants, some adjustments there. We softened 23.12.1 and 23.12.2 from a 3% to 1% reduction. School nutrition, there was about a $1.6 million cut. We've softened it by about $500,000 from a 7.1% cut to a 4.9% cut. And basically what happened there, we would have loved to put more money back in. It's just a matter of it's not there. So as we've had to make some of the other cuts, we backfilled as much as we could in some areas. In some areas we just basically couldn't. 23.17.1, 17.2, and 17.3. 17.3 rolls up into 17.1 actually. 17.2 is a restoration of funds for the misclassification of the special ed FTEs. Devereaux is a residential treatment center. The Cobb County school system is the one that messed up on the calculations or the classification of the students. So we felt like it was something that we needed to do because it's an enterprise, it's a private enterprise. We have an obligation, so we felt obligated to make that fix. 23.18 RESAs, took that cut from a 3% to 1%. And then under technology and career education, we took that from a 3% cut to 1.5% cut and just told them that they could reduce the funds and spread it across as they deemed necessary, and took away the handcuffs on the extended day, extended year piece. Moving on to Section 25, Georgia Forestry Commission. You know, in a year when we're not having forest fires, it's one of those things that it looks pretty easy to go in there and raid, but we have to all realize that all it takes is a lightning strike or someone careless with a match or a train that throws a spark into the forest to kick things off. So we felt like we needed to do some restorations there. On 25.3.1, we restored half of the 64 part-time positions that are there. And then on 25.3.3, that roughly $90,000 softening of a cut there provides about 1,000 hours of air patrol flight time across the state. It's something interesting to note. So far this fiscal year, there have been about 750 structures that have been destroyed, and that number would be considerably larger if it's not for them doing their job and what they do. Moving on to Section 27. 2795, a reduction of an ad from last year of $50,000 that our information tells us was not used, so we've taken that. Then a GETS expenditure projection on 2796, as they're still realigning some things over there. We had to do about a $2 million ad there at the request of the agency in the governor's office. Under VOC Rehab on 27.2, VOC Rehab is a new standalone agency, so we're having to do a few things to help them get through their year, and they've got some challenges with the hospital at Warm Springs, so we're trying to help them a little bit there. The work they do, if you've not been down there, we had the opportunity to go Friday a week ago down there and view what they're doing. If you've never been to Roosevelt Warm Springs Institute and seen the work that they're doing down there, you need to go. An incredibly impressive place with a lot of challenges, but a lot of history as well. Section 28, Office of the Insurance Commissioner. On 28.5.1, we just took that to a 3% cut. It was actually an agency submission that was not taken, but the reduction will be met through managing 4 inspector positions due to attrition. Moving on to Section 29, GBI. One small add back there on 29.11. That was a contract service for security of the building. We're going to look at that in depth going into 14. They do take a lot of nighttime deliveries of evidence and that sort of thing. And so without adequate warning, we felt it was not a good idea to take that cut at this time. However, on 29.1.2, we did take a small reduction in personal services of $50,000. 29.4.1, we made a change there on the telecommunications reduction. Doing away with the landlines takes a little bit of time to happen, and basically by the time they get this assigned into law and they know they have to make those cuts, they're only going to have about 1 month left in this fiscal year to grab those savings, so we've recognized that. Under 29.5.2, under CJCC, we've taken a reduction there on the accountability courts based on what the actual expenditures are going to be. Moving on to Section 37, Department of Public Health. Heard from many of you on line 37.2.1 about the hypertension outreach services and how important they are to those areas. And we're talking about Whitfield, Lawrence, Richmond, Dougherty, and Clark counties is where that money is going to be restored to, $511,737. Under 37.7.3, moving these people onto PSIP is working actually better than what they thought it would, so we were able to capture some additional savings there. And then on 37.14.1, dealing with the Trauma Care Network Commission, as many of you have seen the audit that came back talking about those. In the 5 years they've been in existence, they've only established 6 additional trauma centers across the state. None of those are in level 1 or level 2. All have been in levels 3 or lower. So we need to work with them. We're going to work with them as we go into 14 to try to clarify what their role is. And one of the notations in the audit was that there was a lack of coordination. So we're going to try to help them clarify some of their problems and find some resolutions there. Section 38, Public Safety. Under Post 3811, 11.1. and 11.2. On 11.1, the other funds mentioned there are not available, so we're going to have to take and go on and fund that for the duration of this year. The cut in 38.11.2 is just a 3% reduction. Then under the Public Safety Training Center, 38.12.3, it winds up that's a slight restoration, basically for ammunition or bullets. They like to shoot guns, and if they're going to shoot guns, we want them to know how to shoot guns. Moving on to Section 40, Board of Regents. $40.4.1 under the Enterprise Innovation Institute. We just raised the reduction to match the agency's 3% reduction submission. Under teaching, under 40.17.1 is partial restoration of the $2.7 million cut to the Georgia Gwinnett College. They're showing a decreased rate, although it's still above the other institutions in the state rate of growth. It's starting to kind of reach that crest, so we've taken a softened that cut by about $500,000 there. Section 41, Department of Revenue. We got a reduction of an add back there on 41.4.1, a reduction of the add back of about $1.36 million, and the $625,000 is what's needed for the remainder of the year. So that's a pretty simple one. Moving on to Section 47, DOT. Only one change there in Airport Aid, 47.11. Restoration of $125,000 cut. As most of you know, just as hospitals are, and we've talked about as being economic development tools and engines in a community, airports serve a similar purpose. That $125,000 cut would mean a reduction of about $2.5 million in match from the federal government. It is a match of a 5% state, 5% local, then feds put in 90%. So that's what that relates to. Section 48, Department of Veterans Services. Under Veterans Benefits, you'll see a slight reduction in add back there. But again, by the time the budget's signed into law and takes effect, you'll only have 1 quarter in which that needs to operate. That's a new program to take care of vets that are returning home from service. We want to make sure that they are covered, they're taken care of. However, the time just says that they're not going to need that full 241, so we're going to do 125.10 there. Under Section 50, General Obligation Bonds, just some real small adjustments, putting them in the right category. You'll see 50.1.9 drops down to 50.2.3 in new bonds. We're just trying to clean up the bookwork and paperwork. 50.2.4 just recognizes the savings where they came in under budget on that particular project, and those funds are not needed. That pretty much wraps up everything. Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to take any questions if they are, and if they're not, we'll take a motion.
Thank you, Chairman England. You have two questions at this time. First question is Chairman Rogers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman England, on page 14 of 60, the State Accounting Office, on lines 11.1, can you bring me up to speed on what that is? And is that a continuation that they continue to do? Or
that is an ongoing program year over year, and it's basically where the state agency financial officers come in to come up to speed on any new accounting principles or any new federal or state regulations we may pass, just letting them know and understand what's going on there.
Okay, so they're in the department. How many people are in that department now?
And SAO?
It used to be around 105, 100 or so.
I'm not sure in the department. We can get you that number, though.
Okay, so
But
this is ongoing.
Yes,
Okay.
And this applies to all state agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a contract.
You have another question from Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. We talked about the phase 1 emergency medicine clinics that we have throughout the state and emergency rooms. Do you have an idea about how much money we're actually receiving from the super speeder bill or law that passed and the funds that we're receiving from that, and how effective that's been?
I do have that number. I don't have it right in front of me. Christine has it, I think, right here. It's actually been more effective than I thought it was going to be, based on the number I saw earlier this year. The revenue estimate's about $18.4 million.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see any more questions. Members of the committee, Chairman England has moved the 2013 amended budget do pass. I hear several seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Several nays. Mr. Chairman, it passes.
Thank you. We're adjourned.